and thank you all for joining us. I'm pleased to join you today to provide an important update regarding our ongoing efforts to reform policing in the city of Columbus and to promote greater trust, transparency, and accountability between our officers and our residents. Nearly 2 years ago, City Attorney Zach Klein and I invited the U.S. Department of Justice to conduct a thorough review of the policies and practices at the Columbus Division of Police. We knew then, as we do now, that the only way to successfully deploy an effective 21st century community policing model is to enlist the specialized expertise, fresh perspectives, and extensive collaboration with our partners throughout our neighborhoods and in law enforcement, including at the federal level. Specifically, we asked the DOJ to evaluate our existing reform efforts, assess current operations, offer remedies where deficiencies and disparities exist, and produce findings that help to advance trust between CPD and the public. We submitted our letter in April of 2021, and the DOJ accepted our request in September of that year. This marked the first time that the DOJ has ever been invited by the city to review the Columbus Division of Police, and the first time the DOJ came to Columbus with the COPS office leading the charge. COPS stands for Community-Oriented Policing Services, and they've worked for decades to empower local communities with the tools, knowledge, and resources needed to reduce violent crime and improve community police relations. Since then, they've engaged with leadership and personnel at CPD and public safety to conduct their review. Both the scope and substance of that review, including what would be examined, the time frame for completion, and what would be recommended, fell exclusively within the purview, discretion, and control of the DOJ. While we could make the ask, and in doing so, draw their attention to specific aspects of the division, the DOJ had the ultimate say as to what their work would actually entail. We're now in possession of their final report, and we're grateful for their findings. This report validates that we're on the right track, but it also indicates there is still much work to be done. Chief Bryant will lay out some of the specifics of the report and what they mean for the division in terms of both existing and future reforms. We've also followed up with the DOJ with a new letter requesting further independent examination of 3 key areas: evaluating our use of force policies, auditing our technology infrastructure, fortifying our community policing training practices to make sure our efforts are as effective and comprehensive as possible. They've already indicated that they'll hit the ground running with a more detailed analysis of these items, and we look forward to continued collaboration with the DOJ. To talk more about the report and the city's partnership with the DOJ and the COPS office, it's my pleasure to introduce City Attorney Zach Klein.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, it's good to see everyone again. As the mayor indicated in April of 2021, the mayor and I sent a letter to the Department of Justice, no strings attached, asking the department to come to Columbus and do an evaluation of the Division of Police. It was important for us to phrase the letter in a way where the Justice Department was in control. The City of Columbus had no authority and control over how the Justice Department would engage the city, whether that's through the COPS office or a patterns of practice investigation. What we were really getting at is asking the Justice Department to be an independent review of how the City of Columbus can continue to improve its policing practices to better serve the community. The COPS office was ultimately chosen by the Justice Department to engage with the city. And over the past 2 years or so, they have been on site. They have worked with my team in the city attorney's office. They've worked with the Division of Police leadership, Department of Public Safety leadership, the mayor's office, other city department and personnel, as well as community groups, and going into an in-depth dive of how we can build upon the progress that we've already made in the city of Columbus to improve policing, which is significant with the help of the community, but not resting on our laurels and identifying where our weaknesses are and how we can continue to improve. One thing that struck me in the conversations that I had with the Justice Department and the cops office was the appropriate focus that they had on community policing. This was a priority coming out of the protests in the summer of 2020, and why, working with Chief Bryant and First Assistant Chief Potts, that we created the Community Immersion Program. So for the folks that don't know, this is a centerpiece, I think, of the building block of what it takes to do appropriate community policing in Columbus, and it starts with recruits. It starts with the recruit class at the Division of Police. So we're now within our 6th recruit class, where officers spend nearly 60 to 65 hours of their training immersed in the community, in plainclothes uniforms, in a non-threatening manner, engaging with not-for-profits with roundtable discussions of how it's like to live in the neighborhoods that are unique to the city of Columbus. That is the centerpiece and bedrock of the foundation for officers that come from all across the United States, specifically all across Ohio, and places like where I grew up in Belpre, Ohio, where you're not used to being in the big city with its diversity and the special neighborhoods that make Columbus so great. But to get your hands dirty and work with not-for-profits and work with people in the community, the citizens that you ultimately serve as the Division of Police, and understand where they're coming from, what it's like to live in their shoes. And I think that is a centerpiece with the cops office report of how we can build upon that to make our Division of Police the best police department in the United States. So, Chief Bryant, thank you for being a partner in getting that off the ground. And I look forward to working with the Division of Police, with you, Mayor, the Department of Public Safety, to implement what the cops office is recommending, but also to look at the next phase as it relates to use of force, among other things. One of the most important things that I think every police department in the United States needs to do as they continually improve how they deliver good, quality, effective policing right here in the city of Columbus. I'm going to turn it over to you, Chief.
Thank you. Good morning. I want to thank the U.S. Department of Justice for their time in evaluating the division. I'm glad to see some of the changes we've already made are the ones they found to be leading us in the right direction. The division and I welcome this inquiry to help us understand how we can better serve our community. The DOJ report highlighted some areas that we need to continue to address, but it was also very complimentary of what we are doing in the division moving forward. One of the steps the DOJ would like to see us implement is setting up a leadership group. This group will be led by First Assistant Chief Potts and will consist of members from the Mayor's Office, Public Safety, the Columbus Civil Service Commission, City Attorney's Office, and the community. This group will be in charge of reviewing recommendations for recruitment, hiring, and retention. An action plan will also be created for these recommendations to be implemented, and this group will review and approve these plans. This will hold the division accountable, and we can also update the public on the progress that we make. The DOJ report also highlighted our need to reorganize. When I started here, it was one of the first things I looked at. By implementing a second assistant chief and restructuring our drug crimes to the new Organized Crime Bureau and reorganizing the Criminal Investigations Bureau, our information and communication sharing has significantly improved. I plan to make further adjustments so our division can continue to evolve and move forward. This will include adding a third assistant chief position and propose changes to increase the number of patrol zones. Last, we will continue to increase our community engagement by restructuring our community liaison officers, known as our CLOs, into a strong community engaged problem-solving initiative. We will look to redefine the CLO duties and make sure they receive adequate training in community-based policing. The CLOs will be used to extend our message to the community and to get feedback on public safety concerns from the neighborhoods they serve. They are a critical piece of our communication plan. However, community engagement is not limited to just one unit within CPD. All our personnel, sworn and civilians, will be reminded that community policing and engagement that's everyone's duty. Strengthening community trust is more critical now than ever, as communities' cooperation with the police to report crimes and assist in investigations is essential in deterring violence and holding violent criminals accountable. Reinforcing the partnership between our officers and the community we served is imperative for combating crime and achieving lasting public safety. So once again, we thank the U.S. Department of Justice for coming to Columbus and guiding us on a path to becoming a stronger division. Thank you. Please help me welcome our Safety Director, Robert Clark.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being with us. I want to begin also by thanking the Department of Justice for their engagement with our Division of Police. I'd also like to commend Chief Bryant and her staff for their openness and accessibility during this process. In fact, we've already heard from the DOJ that some of the structural changes that they've asked for, the Chief has already implemented. Everyone involved is united by the same goal: delivering the best public safety services possible to the City of Columbus. That means having the courage to take a hard look at ourselves and the work that we must do. It means giving our dedicated women and men the training, resources, and support they need to excel and to carry out the work we've asked them to do. And it means holding ourselves accountable to the highest level and highest standards. In the last few weeks, as we've stood in this room, we've met with both the director of the ATF and the U.S. Marshal Service to explore new collaborations in crime-fighting strategies and techniques and partnerships. We understand that while we must leverage every partnership possible to reduce violence, it's just as important that we examine our own house and make sure that it is also the best that it can be. Because we understand that safety and reform are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they go hand in hand. It is not a coincidence that as the community has seen, that we've been making changes in solving crimes and dramatically reducing the crime to include murder, upwards of over 30%. As Mayor Ginther has outlined, this is not just the end of the process, but in fact, it is the beginning of the work that we will continue to do in partnership. We are truly committed to continuous improvement, and there is always more work to do. We look forward to that work, and we welcome the continued partnership with the Department of Justice and all of our partners collectively. And with that, my friends, I'd like to invite Mayor Ginther back to the podium. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Clark and Chief Bryant, Assistant Chief Bodker, City Attorney Klein, for all of your work and engagement. Neighbors, it's worth noting that this review by the DOJ didn't occur within a silo or in a vacuum. It didn't occur in lieu of or at the expense of our other efforts on other fronts. Instead, it represents one of several meaningful reforms, quite honestly, historic reforms. We have made more changes in the last few years than ever in the city's history, and we're proud of that work, but we know we have much more to do together. We heard loud and clear the demands for change and reform, but we also believe that a safe community is one that lifts up and supports our officers as well. We can change and reform and support law enforcement at the same time. I'm proud of the reforms we've implemented in Columbus, many of them historic firsts for our city. To recap briefly, we've enacted Andre's Law, which makes it a criminal act to fail to provide aid to an injured person in police custody. Seated the first ever Civilian Police Review Board. Established the Office of the Inspector General. Deployed second-generation body-worn cameras and the latest in-car camera technology. Overhauled our responses to peaceful protests, eliminating the use of chemical agents to disperse crowds. Instituted independent investigations for all police-involved shootings or in-custody deaths through the state's Bureau of Criminal Investigations, and more. There'll be additional reforms too, as we learn new lessons, gain access to new information and new methods, and continue to engage in a candid and constructive dialogue with the community. That's because we believe in the power of continuous improvement to propel all of us forward. And we'll be working with all of our partners to build a safer, brighter, and more just future for all in our city. We'd be happy to take any questions from the press.
Any reason why you were requesting more information regarding the use of force, the tech infrastructure and training process? Did they not give you enough information? Was that something they looked at when they first came?
Yeah, ultimately, the DOJ decides what they're going to investigate, what they're going to review, and they have had complete control of that. It was one of the things that we had asked for the city attorney in our initial letter to the DOJ. And so based on the briefings they gave us last week of the draft report, and then obviously they're going to be issuing a final report here today, we wanted to continue to work together on the use of force review and those other areas, the audit of technology and other things. This is not a final engagement with the DOJ. They have committed to an ongoing partnership, which we're really excited about, having that independent review in partnership with law enforcement experts from around the country to help to make sure that we're measuring ourselves up against the very best.
And how will that work moving forward? Will they still be making those regular visits? Is it going to be similar to what we saw with this investigation, or is it different?
My guess is there'll be some parts that are similar. Their point of contact is going to remain the chief. She's been the main point of contact with the DOJ, so she'll continue to be instrumental in that work moving forward. It may look a little different based on the things that we're requesting. They have responded to us verbally that they are willing to continue working with us, and so they'll outline the kind of parameters and the details of the partnership moving forward, hopefully in the next few weeks.
And would you guys be able to know, if you have this answer or not, how many other similar sized cities like Columbus are doing these types of investigations with their police system? Or is this something that normally happens, or is this something new for police departments across the country?
Well, it's historic and a first for us. This is the first time the city of Columbus, in the history of the city, has invited the DOJ in, and they sent the cops office to work with us on this effort. I think they're working with a number of divisions across the country. Maybe the chief will have a better sense of that. And then obviously other parts of the DOJ do the past practice investigations, and they announced several of those this year in places around the country. I think Phoenix, Louisville, trying to think of a couple others. Any other comments on this? Chief, anything?
One of the things that was requested initially was a review of technology. You said that that's part of the continuing part of the partnership. Mm-hmm. Was that not something the DOJ wanted to review initially? No,
any of the things that we've asked for a continued partnership on, they've never said that they wouldn't. They're just not included in this initial report or update. And so we're confident that these three areas that we've asked for continued partnership, and there may be more things that we discover as we continue this partnership we could use their help with.
So just to be clear, do you have the final report already?
We do. We had a draft report in a presentation shared last week. The DOJ will release their final report on this segment of the partnership later today.
So when are, like, the leadership group, when are these things starting? Have they started already? What's the timeline for these initiatives?
There are a number of things the chief has already put in place, but I'll let her speak to the leadership group.
So we are in the process of putting that leadership group together as we speak. We've already been working collaboratively with all of the people that we named, but we're going to make sure that we memorialize that, put this group together, make sure that we're very forward-facing and giving that information to the community as well.
And then once you meet, do you then have to send in reports to the DOJ? How does that work?
Yeah, so the DOJ is, like the mayor stated, they're in constant contact with us. They have not just given us the report and walked away. They're working with us to ensure that we're implementing, and they're offering all of their resources to be able to make sure that we're able to do the things that they've requested or suggested that we do.
Same thing with the liaison officers. Is there a timeline when things are going to change, or is everything fluid?
Everything is fluid. We're working towards a lot of our goals, but as you know, sometimes these things take time because it's not just about us making the changes. We have to collaborate with different entities across the board to make sure that we're all on the same page.
And These changes, what will the community see? Will they notice a big difference in regards to their liaison officers, because they work very closely with them?
Yes, they should. Hopefully, they're noticing a difference now because we didn't wait on the DOJ to come in and tell us you need to make changes. We've been consistently making changes from the beginning, but as we move forward, we're going to engage the community to make sure that their input is involved in making some of the decisions that we're making moving forward to make sure that we're giving the community what they deserve and what they ask for in their CLOs.
Did the DOJ have any specific concerns with CPD?
You know, the report indicated that there were certain areas that they felt that we can strengthen, but the good news is that a lot of the things that they pointed out, we were already working towards. So we were able to get a lot of these things done fairly quickly, and a lot of their resources that they've added to the table, even in regards to training, you know, being able to train some of our command staff, being able to train some of our frontline supervision. So they've been very helpful in assisting us in being able to move it forward even better.
Aside from training, can you point to any specifics that they said you really need to work on this area or this is a concern of ours?
So the areas that they focused on, obviously they had access to everything, but our community engagement was extremely important. Our technology was important. Our training was important. Everything is important, but obviously they can't do everything. So they focused on specific areas, and they didn't just talk to the people that you see behind them. They went out to the community. They had conversations with community groups. They've had conversations with business leaders. So their focus wasn't just on city entities. They spoke to the community to make sure that their voice was heard as well.
Did you get feedback on things that the department is doing well?
Yes. Yes, they were very complimentary of a lot of the things that the division is already doing, and it's stated in the report as well that there are things that we're doing that we were already working towards. Some of the things that they suggested, they were very pleasantly surprised to know that we were already doing that as a division.
Since we don't have a copy of the report yet, can you get more specifics? I'm sorry.
You'll have it later.
Also, quickly to reiterate, those areas of concern that they said, did they tell you those areas and then you started working with them, or was that already in the process and then they came back with the review and said, hey, here's what we're looking at?
So they were, when they came in, they sat down, obviously, not with just us, but with the mayor's office, with the city attorney's office, with the community, with business leaders, and then they came back and said, okay, these are the areas of concern or issues that people are pointing out. What are your concerns and issues too? So we all worked collaboratively together to make a determination on what's important. But again, we opened everything up to them because what we didn't want to do was miss something. We didn't want it to be a situation where we think we're doing something great and find out that we're not. So we gave them everything and access to everything.
I'd say two of the things that I also would point out that will be part of the report, the recommendations, is an acknowledgement of all the external reviews that have already been done, whether it's the matrix report, review of the civil service audit and other things. And one of the things they really helped us with is taking all those reports and recommendations and putting them together into one dashboard and more effectively and proactively communicate with the community the progress that's being made there, and also giving us some strategy on how to go about implementing all those reforms. We can't do everything all at the same time. So what's the right type of sequencing and prioritizing for maximum impact and to continue to build trust and confidence from the community and the Division of Police, again, against those best practices around the country.
Did they give any reason on why they chose to focus on certain areas as opposed to other areas?
No, I think from the beginning, their thought was that they were going to be working alongside us in a partnership for the foreseeable future. So my guess is these were the areas that they thought, and I think, you know, based on engagement with the chief, as she just said, we want to make sure we were on the right path with a lot of these reforms and changes that we were making. So having their help early on with that, these other things are very important as well, and obviously look forward to their continued engagement and support there too.
What kind of cost is there going to be for the continued partnership? Is there going to be a cost to taxpayers for looking at the use of force, the technology piece in particular?
I believe all of the resources that the DOJ are bringing to bear, there won't be a cost to taxpayers here. Obviously, there might be recommendations and changes that we need to make to division operations, enhancement of community policing, those types of things that certainly will be contemplated by us in the future.
So will there be any cost to taxpayers in regards to what they recommended? Because I understand you guys pay the cost for what they put out the recommendations and you got to foot the bill.
Yeah.
What are the costs for that?
As of right now, nothing.
What is the timeline moving forward as far as the DOJ's next phase, especially people are probably going to be most concerned about a review of use of force?
That ultimately is going to be decided by the DOJ. We can invite them in. We can ask them to focus on certain things. Obviously, this takes time because they're wanting to do a very comprehensive look and engage with everybody here in the community. And so obviously, we think this is a top priority. That's why we're talking about it. That's why we're asking for it. So our hope is as quickly as possible, but they want to make sure we're getting it right as opposed to getting it done quickly and setting arbitrary deadlines.
So
You
how
said
do they
you
look
were-
at the use of force? What are specifics? Do they look at past cases? Do they look at, here's the policies and procedures? How does that look, that review?
That'd be a
What
great
happens?
question for the DOJ. My guess is they're going to take a look at everything.
The request that you're making, the second request specifically is requesting the use of force review. What did you see, or maybe Attorney Klein saw, that prompted that to be something you specifically asked them for in writing?
Yeah, I mean, we asked for it 2 years ago, so we think it's a top priority, and we think it's important for both police and the community to have that independent review of our use of force policy, looking at best practices around the country, particularly as we're making this huge transition from being a 20th century law enforcement organization to a 21st century community policing organization, and the incredible work that the chief is leading to change the culture within the division. We think that's critically important. City Attorney?
Although the mayor and I asked for a use of force audit this iteration of the Justice Department through cops, they did not do it this iteration. And when you receive the report, at least the preview that they gave us, it is clear that they did not touch use of force this time. That's why the mayor is asking now, we need you to come back and specifically deep dive on use of force. And as it relates to taxpayer dollars, we're fortunate enough through the Justice Department COPS program that all of their advice and technical assistance is free of charge to the taxpayers of the city of Columbus through the municipal tax. I don't want to say it's free of charge because we're all taxpayers to the federal government, but it's not out of the city coffers. Now, if there is a specific recommendation, whether it's through use of force or whether it's through investment in technology, then that may be a charge to taxpayers because you may need to upgrade a system through technology, buy more servers, whatever that may be. But the actual work that the Justice Department is providing is free of charge to taxpayers of the city of Columbus. And I think that's the beautiful partnership in what COPS office and the Justice Department can provide to cities around the country. And just one other thing the mayor mentioned, the COPS office was essentially defunct from 2016 to 2020. Like it was non-existent in this country. In the city of Columbus, I don't want to say that we're the first ever, although it is the first for Columbus, to unilaterally reach out to the COPS office in April of 21 and say, come look under the hood. We want your independent expertise and oversight of how our division of police can continue to do a great job in serving the citizens of Columbus. And we were fortunate enough that the Justice Department said yes, and we were fortunate enough that they sent the COPS office for us to be able to partner to figure out how we can continue to improve training, whether it's management or otherwise, whether we can continue to improve through technology or continue to improve in our investments in community-based policing, for example, like the immersion program I was talking about. So we have this wonderful platform to build off of, and then the mayor sending a follow-up letter just like, we need to do a deep dive now. Thank you for this COPS report, and it's wonderful. But now specifically as it relates to use of force, or specifically as it relates to technology, specifically as it relates to community engagement, give us more expertise specifically in those areas.
And are you surprised by that? I mean, you sent out this letter nearly 2 years ago saying, we need help in use of force, we need help on this, and they chose to ignore it, and now here you are coming back again. What's your reaction to the fact that they chose not to deal with that? They went for other things.
Yeah, look, my reaction is this was an independent process done by the Justice Department. Any notion that Mayor Ginther, with all due respect, or Zach Klein can call up Merrick Garland and dictate how this is going to be done is a farce. They're going to operate on their own terms, on their own timeline. And we're grateful for the partnership and that we have no control over what they're going to do. We're fortunate now in phase 2 that based on what the mayor has said, that they've had open line of communication to do the deep dives on use of force. And I know that's something that and I don't want to speak for Chief Bryant, but it's something that the chief and I have talked about, and my police legal advisor, Jeff Furby, and I have met with the police leadership, Assistant Chief Bodker, First Assistant Potts, and Chief Bryant, about specifically use of force. This is a conversation that's not new as it relates to the Division of Police here in Columbus and the City Attorney's Office and the Mayor's Office and the Department of Public Safety. This is a conversation that we have been having now for the past several months, because it is the next iteration, as of what I said, for police offices across the country to figure out how we can have the best use of force training that protects constitutional rights, protects officer safety, and ensures public safety.
There are going to be people in the community who see the DOJ has been here for 18 months, you asked for a use of force review, and you're having to go back and do it again. Why should they be confident the DOJ is going to do it this time and we'll actually get what we're looking for from the DOJ?
Well, the specific letter that the mayor followed up on said, we need you to do use of force. And if, as the mayor said, they said yes, then they're specifically doing use of force.
And I think it would be a little unfair to characterize as, Steve, that the DOJ has ignored that request. They prioritized a number of things that we asked for help with. This is the first chapter, their first report. There's going to continue to be engagement and cooperation and partnership with the DOJ moving forward. I've been very clear with them in this follow-up letter what we believe our priorities are. There have been positive conversations with them, and we believe that'll be a priority moving forward. We'll stick around for one-on-ones. Thanks, everybody.